Hey, speaking of Veterans Day, that's our topic today is some veterans pension program benefits that are available to wartime veterans and their spouses, their surviving spouses, if they served during a wartime period and met some other requirements. So today I'm going to go into those kind of what you need to qualify for that benefit, what it's, when you can really benefit from it, and other sort of miscellaneous sort of qualification rules that you might want to be aware of when dealing with this benefit. There's a lot of information out there on this. Some of it's better than others, certainly. It's a benefit that unfortunately a lot of people don't take advantage of when they really need it. Especially surviving spouses of wartime veterans. So that's what I'm going to get into today and talk more in depth about, and how you can look at potentially receiving some of those benefits. So with that being said, welcome again, and welcome. So I'm Justin Randall. I'm an attorney with Hooper Law Office. For those of you who have not met me before or have not worked with me. Again, I'll just extend my gratitude to all our veterans who have served in the past or are currently serving. Thank you for all that you do. Today our topic is about how some of the benefits that you can receive in return for your service. So particularly one of the benefits I'm talking about today is known as the Improved Pension Program, sometimes referred to as aid and attendance by the VA and by other organizations. This is a great benefit available to wartime veterans or their surviving spouses of wartime veterans, for them to be able to receive a tax-free pension directly into their bank account, depending on their income and their medical expenses. So this is a benefit that often goes sort of underutilized, I think, and especially when it comes to elderly veterans or their elderly surviving spouses looking at potential long-term care expenses down the road. So for those of you who have registered today and are participating via Zoom, you'll be able to send in questions to me, and I'll be able to answer them and see them in real time. So if you have any questions or anything I say brings up any kind of points of concern to you at all, please feel free to submit the questions, and with the Q&A function through Zoom, I'll be able to see them and answer them. Another thing to keep in mind is that after this, if you registered, we will be sending out an email. If you respond to that email with your address, we'll be able to send you some materials, some books that we've written on this subject, on long-term care in general, as well as a couple of handouts, flyers we have here. So one specifically detailing the Improved Pension Program, and then also a flyer from, more specifically going through the actual pension benefits, the amounts you might be able to receive and all of that. So this is the material we'll be handing out if you've registered and respond to us with that address so we can send it to you. Another thing to keep in mind too is we will be sending out an evaluation form. That evaluation form does a couple of things. One, it's really helpful for me if you have any feedback, things you'd like to hear us talk about going forward, or anything, any critiques or anything like that. It helps us improve this whole process. Another thing, though, is that if I brought up anything today that raises some concerns for you or for family members or anything like that, you can, a part of that evaluation form is actually a place where you can say that you would like us to reach out to you to set up an initial consultation as well. It's a free, we set it up for 2 hours. It's free consultation. We don't charge anything for that consultation. So, you don't have to worry about paying us anything just to come in and speak to us initially. So it's really important, if you have any questions or concerns that you want us to talk through with you, that, you're comfortable coming in. So if anything does raise any concerns for you that I talk about today, please fill that out. We won't reach out to you to set anything up if you don't fill that section out. So it's completely up to you. But if you would like us to reach out, please fill that in. All right. So this Improved Pension Program is a great benefit for veterans, wartime veterans, and their surviving spouses as well. There's a couple of different sort of qualifications that you need to meet in order to potentially receive this benefit. The first is that you have to have served active duty for at least 90 days for reasons other than training. You couldn't, can't have been just in training the entire 90 days. One of those 90 days, only one of those 90 days, has to have been during a wartime period. You can't have been dishonorably discharged. And then, the kind of one thing to keep in mind too is that wartime period is a little different than a lot of people are, you might read in the history books, for example. So to give you an idea of what I mean by that, according to the dates on this program, World War II ended actually in on December 31st of 1946. So people who served after the combat had ended in World War II, but were active duty during that period of time still for at least 90 days are considered wartime veterans for the purpose of this program. And you do not have to have been actually in a theater of combat in order to receive to be considered a wartime veteran. You could have been still stateside during Vietnam, during World War II or Korea or any of those conflicts, and you still are considered a wartime veteran. If you were boots on the ground, you still obviously qualify as well. It's just not something that needs to be a part of that qualification. So if you are viewing through Facebook Live, I just want to remind everybody that you're not going to be able to send in questions. So it's just through Zoom, but just to keep in mind, if I'm not responding to your questions and you're watching this on Facebook Live, that's why I can't see them that way. So the service requirements are one big component of the improved pension program, but another is the financial qualifications. So it used to be prior to October of 2018, there was no real set rule on the asset qualifications that you were allowed to, or what you were allowed to keep and still qualify for this program. It was sort of this nebulous, it could be between 40,000 and 80,000, but if you go higher than 80,000, we're almost positive you won't qualify. That sort of loose guideline. But in 2018, in October of 2018, they actually put a hard cap on that now. They gave us some very firm guidelines, and they tried to sort of marry it with Medicaid's rules and their asset qualifications. They're still a little different, but they're pretty close. So for example, as what you're allowed to keep as a wartime veteran or a surviving spouse of a wartime veteran and still qualify for this program, this pension, is roughly about $128,000, $129,000 in countable assets. So that, means things like your bank account, your IRAs, things like that. What they don't count against that number, though, what is not a countable asset, is the primary residence of the veteran or the surviving spouse. And up to about 2 acres of surrounding land. So you could have, $1 million home theoretically, and just 1 acre of land around it, and you're still, that's not countable against that upper limit. If you go over those 2 acres of land, if you have more than that, any additional acreage is considered countable towards your $128,000 cap, unless there's some local zoning ordinances or laws in the area that say you can't sell a lot under a certain size. Then you can have potentially more, but it really depends on those local laws, and it's not something you generally want to rely on. But that is not countable against those asset caps. Anything else is, though. So your bank accounts, savings accounts, investments, other additional properties, or real estate you might have, like a cabin, retirement accounts of either spouse, those are all countable against that cap. Unlike Medicaid, the VA does not distinguish between a single and a married person for those caps. So Medicaid has different rules for those and different asset caps of what you're allowed to keep if you're married versus single, and depending on who's receiving care. The VA does not have that. It is just that cap no matter what. So one thing to keep in mind there then, though, is that there's a lot less that is exempt from that countable asset amount. So for example, if a married couple is looking at Medicaid and one spouse is healthy, they can keep their retirement account, their IRA or 401k, those types of accounts, and not have that be countable against the spouse receiving care. With the VA, that's not true. It's all countable. They don't distinguish. So this benefit, though, unlike Medicaid, does not pay these long-term care facilities directly, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be used for long-term care. How they calculate what you're allowed to get from this benefit is they look at your income. And depending on what your income is, that can either, lessen the amount of the benefit that you get or completely wipe it out if your income is too high. The VA uses a process, or I guess a distinction, what they call IVAP, income for VA purposes. So how they figure out what that is they take the veteran and the spouse's income and they subtract unreimbursed medical expenses from it. If the IVAP then is negative, it's considered zero. So that means they can get the maximum benefit from the VA, from the improved pension program. If it's potentially still $1,000, they take $1,000 off of that benefit that they would otherwise receive. And to give you some hard numbers on that, so a single veteran, for example, can receive up to about $1,900 a month from this benefit. So that's the maximum that a single veteran can receive. So if their IVAP is zero, they'll get $1,900 a month tax-free, or about $23,000 a year tax-free from this benefit. If they're a married veteran, it's closer to about $2,300 a month, and a surviving spouse can get about $1,250 a month from it, so $1,250. And that's tax-free. So this benefit is not taxable. It goes directly to the veteran or the surviving spouse's bank account, and can be used to cover any sort of expense. It does not have to be medical expenses that it is used for. It doesn't have to be used for long-term care expenses. So it's a bit more flexible than Medicaid is as a benefit, where it pays directly to the facility, and it is not, it does not go directly to the recipient of the benefits. This benefit is a really underutilized tool for long-term care planning, for example. So a lot of times, you go into a facility, or you look at going into a facility, and some of these facilities will say, well, before we'll even let you live here on Medicaid, we won't let you live here only receiving that benefit unless you can privately pay us for a couple of years, possibly 1 to 2 years. So this veteran's benefit, can be a great way to supplement a veteran or the surviving spouse's income to potentially help them cover that private pay requirement for a couple of years, or at least kind of slow the cash burn a little bit over those couple of years. So it's a great tool for that. Again, the surviving spouses are often overlooked in this benefit because they tend to think, oh, I didn't serve, my husband did, or my wife did, and I didn't receive, I can't receive any of those benefits. I didn't serve. So that's not the case here, though. This is a benefit that surviving spouses of wartime veterans can also receive. It's a great tool, and it's often overlooked for that purpose. One thing to keep in mind, just like Medicaid, is you still need to be very careful about giving things away. So the same discussion about, oh, I put the home in the kid's name for Medicaid, you want to be very careful about doing that with the VA improved pension program as well. The VA, just like Medicaid, does give you a penalty period based off of the value of what you gave away. So if I gave away, $100,000 for the VA, I would have created a penalty for myself and would not be able to receive that pension for a set period of time then if it helped me get qualified. One thing that's a little different for this program over looking at potentially Medicaid divestments is, rather than a 5-year look back period for Medicaid, the VA went with a 3-year look back period. So currently we're not at that maximum 3-year look back yet, because it only looks back to when the law changed in October of 2018. We will get up to that 3 years next year in October, I guess. So we're getting close to it, but we're not quite there yet. That penalty is determined different from Medicaid as well. So Medicaid says, regardless of whether that gift helped you get qualified for Medicaid, it helped you get down to those asset limitations, so even if the home was an exempt asset for a married couple and they gave it away, that would still be a divestment for Medicaid. Whereas with the VA, the difference here is that the VA says we only count something as a divestment if it helped the veteran get qualified for this benefit. So for example, if you were already under that $128,000 cap for your assets, your countable assets, and you gave $5,000 to your son or your daughter as a gift for Christmas or whatever, that wouldn't necessarily be considered a divestment for the VA. It doesn't mean you want to go ahead and do that. I should caution you. You still want to be very careful about gifting things away, because we often use this program in conjunction with Medicaid planning, and you don't want to, help yourself get qualified for one or not create a problem for one and then create a problem for the other program. It's just something to be very cautious about still, and always talk to, an attorney before you do anything like that. And I should mention as well, with the VA Improved Pension Program, if you're going to an attorney to help you do this type of planning, make sure that they are VA accredited. So you can look up on the VA's website, VA accredited attorneys. They're accredited for a lot of different areas of VA law. Some are disability benefits. Some like the attorneys in our office are accredited and only do the improved pension planning for our clients. So you may still find an attorney that does slightly different areas than you're looking for, but that's the first thing you want to look for, is if they're not VA accredited, you have to be very careful about the advice that anybody would be giving you, because they may not be accredited to give that advice. So that's the first thing you want to look for. And with the actual application for these benefits, nobody can charge a veteran for the application. So VA accredited attorneys can't charge for the application. If you go to the VA, they can't charge for that application. The application is something that is supposed to be submitted free of charge for the veterans. Now, any planning around that benefit, where if you're doing legal planning and things like that, that can be a little different. They can charge for services associated with that, but the actual application is free of charge for veterans. So yeah, the VA accredited attorney is a huge thing you want to look for. You don't want to just go to any attorney and expect them to either A, know about these benefits, or B, give you the right advice. If they're giving you advice and they are not accredited by the Department of Veterans Affairs, you want to be careful. So just something to keep in mind. It's a little different than when you're going to an elder law attorney looking for Medicaid, and you have to be an attorney, but you don't have to be accredited by Medicaid, for example. So keep that in mind. But this program now, with that 3-year look back period, we used to be able to help get people receive the benefits a lot, almost overnight, right? There was no look back period prior to 2018, October of 2018. So it used to be, you could really utilize this program for kind of emergency Medicaid planning, getting that benefit much more quickly, and helping sort of get someone's assets protected from the nursing home and from nursing home expenses. Now, because of this new look back period, it's not as easy to do that type of planning with it anymore. And now anything you do to help you get qualified for this program is going to cause a divestment and create a penalty, and you're going to not get those benefits right away. So this actually just highlights how important it is with this program to really still look in advance of needing care. If you have any concerns at all about needing assisted living care at some point, nursing home care at some point, and you're worried about protecting things, and you are a wartime veteran or the surviving spouse of a wartime veteran, this is something that just shows how important it is to go talk to someone now. Don't wait to do this until you need care, because then it's not going to be as helpful to you, especially if you are over the asset limitations on that. So, just like with Medicaid planning, this is really important to try to do it in advance if you can. You don't want to wait for Medicaid either, but there are more options available to you than for the VA, for example, with this program. It's much harder to do any sort of emergency planning with the VA Improved Pension. So just to keep that in mind, it is really important to be prospective with a lot of this stuff. The thing that's a little unfortunate with the way they consider sort of wartime veterans with this is it can't have been, you couldn't have been in the reserves during a wartime period. That doesn't count. for this program, unfortunately. So it's, Navy, the Army, Marines, Air Force, I believe the Merchant Marines, things like that are qualified as well, but not the reserves or the National Guard necessarily. So it's just something to keep in mind. Another thing I see a lot of people run into is they're sort of in between wartime periods. A very common one we see right now is people who served during the Cuban Missile Crisis and in the 60 to 61, 62 kind of period. They're right in between the end of Korea and the beginning of Vietnam. So unfortunately, a lot of those people kind of didn't quite hit either wartime period, even though they may have served for, over a year and not just that 90-day period of time. So it's just, it's not going to be a program for everybody, but it is something that if you serve during any of these periods of time, during the World War II period or Korea or Vietnam, that is something to look at. And this is not just for something, a benefit for people who served during kind of the historic wartime periods that you might be thinking of. It can also apply potentially to anybody after 1980 who served during 1980 and beyond. The rules are slightly different for that. It's now, it's not just 90 days, it's a little longer, closer to 2 years. But it is something to keep in mind that we've been at a constant state of war, according to the VA, since 1980. So this benefit applies beyond what you might expect just for elderly veterans or their surviving spouses. And like I said, it does not have to be used for long-term care. Any sort of unreimbursed medical expense, whether it's medication that you're getting that's not being covered by insurance, or treatments that you're getting that are not covered by insurance, if you don't have insurance, things like that, those are unreimbursed medical expenses. So you can potentially look at getting a lot of help from this benefit if you have those expenses and you don't have insurance and you're really struggling to pay them. It's something to really keep in mind, whether you are a veteran yourself, a spouse of a veteran, or a child of a veteran, or just a family friend of a veteran. This is a benefit that often goes underreported and underutilized for the veteran population. So, the VA has a lot of great tools for the veterans as well, especially with long-term care. Obviously, here in Wisconsin, we have King, the King facility, where they are a veterans facility. And depending on your disability rating, if it's a service-connected disability, you can also receive potentially, discounted or completely covered care, depending on if it's a service-connected disability. It also has to be the reason you are receiving care, if that disability rating is used for any sort of discount. So, for example, if I'm, if I have Alzheimer's or dementia, and that's why I'm receiving care, but my disability rating is, say, tied to hearing loss associated with being, an artillery soldier, that is going to be a little hard to prove potentially that that's connected in any way. Agent Orange exposure and those types of health issues are actually a common reason that somebody might need any sort of long-term care. So if you have Agent Orange exposure, you have a much higher chance than somebody else potentially of getting that disability rating to help cover some care. And that in order to get it completely covered, it has to be 80% or above your disability rating. If it's below that, you're not going to receive that coverage by the VA at a VA approved facility. And it does not just have to be King. It can actually be any VA approved facility. King is, the main one that people think about, but it can potentially be a lot of other facilities. Just make sure that it's a VA approved facility. So, like I said, there's a lot of benefits available to veterans and their wartime veterans, but this one in particular, the improved pension program, where it's that direct pension payment, is so much better for surviving spouses of wartime veterans, because that disability rating is not going to apply to them particularly here. A lot of the planning we do surrounding long-term care can be done planning around both Medicaid and the VA. But because of this new look back period with the VA over the last couple of years, it's something that you really want to look at doing in advance if you can help it. You don't want to try to really get qualified overnight unless, unless the penalty period you're creating or the penalty you're creating by any divestment is so minuscule, it's not going to make a difference really, but that's really hard to do. The VA uses a much smaller calculation than Medicaid does to determine its penalty it creates. So that what that essentially means is, if you gave away the same amount of money for the VA and Medicaid, the VA's penalty period is actually going to be longer than Medicaid. So you want to really talk to any VA accredited attorney, ideally one that is also an elder law attorney, before you do any of this type of planning on your own or try to read what the internet says about it. I mean, that's always a dangerous thing to do with legal planning, but in particular, when you're doing anything with long-term care, anything with this improved pension program, there's a lot of misinformation out there. The VA has some decent information on it as well, but still, it can be confusing for people to try to do this on their own. So what I would say is, if you have any of these concerns, if you are a surviving spouse of a wartime veteran, or if you are a veteran of a wartime period yourself, and you want to look into this benefit, I would absolutely recommend, you can come in and talk to attorneys like us. We're all VA accredited here. You can go in and look up on the VA's website, VA accredited attorneys as well. But again, like I said, they might not be elder law attorneys and might be more of a different type of, it might do a different area of VA accredited law. So it's a little, you're not necessarily going to always find what you're looking for just by searching there, because they don't necessarily, set them aside in any sort of categories or anything like that. So you just want to be careful. I guess if there are any questions, we're getting close on time here, so I don't want to hold you guys over too long here, but if you have any questions, and if you, if you didn't feel comfortable asking them, or if you're watching on Facebook Live, for example, and you couldn't ask them to me, you can always, email learnmore@hooperlawoffice.com. That's one of our sort of email hotlines, if you will, of any questions, or if anything I raise today concerns you or sounds like it might apply to you or your family, absolutely, if you want us to reach out to you to set up a time to talk, please fill out the evaluation forms if you receive them, or otherwise you can call our office and just mention that this is something you'd like to talk about. For those of you who don't know our number, it's 920-993-0990. So again, 920-993-0990 is our number for to reach out to if you have any questions and you're not you're not signed up through Zoom and aren't going to be receiving the email evaluation necessarily. So I guess with that, I will wish you guys a happy rest of your day. And again, I just want to extend our warmest gratitude and thanks to the veterans that have served our country and continue to do so over the last, couple of months in particular. I'm sure it's been very hard for veterans serving overseas and everything like that. So thank you to all of you as well, and your family members. But I will wish you guys a happy Veterans Day and extend my thanks one last time. And then I will wish you a good day. And again, thanks for joining us today. Our next seminar is actually, we're talking about how to spot, whether you want to have that discussion about long-term care with a family member. Next week on Wednesday, it'll actually be at 6 p.m. It's an evening one. So if that is a concern at all, with the holidays coming up or anything like that, please reach out and sign up for our webinar or join us on Facebook Live, whichever you prefer. And we will be talking about, ways you can help spot that it's time to maybe have that discussion about long-term care planning and helping your family members out. Again, thanks for joining us, and I will see you guys next week at 6.